Listen, everyone's worried today for good reason about the wars going on. And believe it or not, um, it is troublesome, but the Bible tells you things ahead of time so that you know, okay? And there's also a plan of escape, all right? So you don't have to worry about going through Armageddon. And that's what's going to happen here. All forces are converging on the Middle East, and they're going to be brought into it whether they like it or not. You know, the Bible talks about a 200 million man army coming from the east to attack Israel. It talks about Russia or Rosh. You know, they have linguistics who have studied these words, and you can determine that the biblical words are transferable and they lead right back to different parts of the world. You have Rosh and Put and Cush. These are all lands that are going to attack Israel, and they represent, you know, Ethiopia or Libya or Russia. Then the kings from the east come in. And the Bible says the whole world will be against Israel at the end. And Israel will not have, I mean, I was just reading the book of Hosea, chapter 1 through 3. Israel's referred to as, symbolically, as Gomer, who is a prostitute. Israel really is on its own and is being laid out there, exposed. And they're without God right now. And that's the whole point of everything here, is to get Israel to accept Jesus, whom they already killed. Everything in the world is aimed towards that end goal. It's going to take a 7-year tribulation period for that to take place, where the Antichrist, the false Christ, will rise up with all kinds of fake supernatural powers. Or they'll be real, but they won't be from God. They'll be from Satan. And isn't funny? All the elite, they're almost proud to worship Satan right now, or Baal, or whatever. And look at I mean, if you read Hosea 1 to 3, it talks a lot about what's going on even now. And then the beauty of it is, it talks a lot about God dealing with Israel through Hosea and Gomer, who God told to marry, even though she was unfaithful and basically a prostitute. And that's how he refers to Israel, as being unfaithful and a prostitute. And so, yeah, it's scary right now. Anything can happen. People are trying to get out of Dubai. The airports are jammed. You know, you don't know what Trump's going to do next. And is there going to be some sort of retaliation? You know, who knows? I mean, the Hezbollah in Lebanon are there, and they're being attacked because Iran has sponsored them for so long, and they have fortified it. And Israel's kind of like in the middle, but they're helping out, but they're literally in the middle of the whole thing. And of course, a lot of these countries are sworn to destroy Israel, and they believe it's just a matter of time before that happens. But you know, Jesus has a plan. Jesus has the last word. Jesus is God. He's proven that he's God. All right, and he was around long before, you know, any of this ever happened. He's eternal. All right, and he's the creator, and the created beings have never recognized the creator, and that's basically the message of Hosea. The first three chapters is Gomer, is represented, is representing Israel, and she's unfaithful even during marriage and what have you, but God continually reaches out and reconciles with Gomer, and God is represented by Hosea. So the message today is that there's hope here. I know that sounds crazy. It's like the craziest thing you can say right now. But God is sovereign. These events have already happened, and God has a plan, and this is it. We're all seeing it come down now, and it's an amazing time to be alive. At the same time, you don't know what's going to happen because, I'm reading Hosea, and I'm thinking about, it's talking about the land of Israel and how evil it is and how everyone's a liar, a stealer. There's murders upon murders, and I'm thinking that sounds like America. But in this instance, it's applied to Israel and God's relationship with Israel. Israel is basically a prostitute right now. It doesn't acknowledge God. All right, it doesn't acknowledge Jesus. As God. That's a problem for Israel, and they will not budge on that. Okay, they're not going to budge. It's going to take a 7-year tribulation period where Jesus will intervene. That when they see Jesus coming down, they will look on him and weep. He'll have scars on his hands, and they pierced him, and then they will recognize what they did, and then and only then will they finally accept Jesus. In the meantime, they will not. It's going to take that much. All right, so that's the message today, is despite all this chaos, there is a plan. And, you can do studies on Armageddon and the rapture. See, the rapture is important to note that God removes his church before pouring out his wrath on, and that's consistent in biblical teaching in the Bible. Whenever God has poured out his wrath, he's removed. Look at Noah. And the Bible says, in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the second coming of the Son of Man, which is the name for Jesus. God removed the righteous, and he poured out his wrath on everyone. There's some estimates that there were 8 billion people alive back then, which is interesting. But nowadays he calls us righteous just if we have faith, if we believe what he did was sufficient, if we believe in the resurrection, believe Jesus is God, and that only comes from being born again. So if you're not born again, you don't have the Spirit of God, and you can't believe Jesus. How to be born again is to rethink who Jesus is, and believe in the Word, to read the Word, hear the gospel message, and believe it or not. If you don't, you're not born again. If you believe it, you are born again. And what is the message? The message is, Jesus has come to earth, and he died on a cross for the sins of the world, for payment of sin. And then he rose from the dead, okay? And now he says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. These are all predicted in time, too, if you really get into the Bible. You can see how this was all laid out ahead of time. It's all independently verifiable, objectively verifiable. There are objective benchmarks in history that show the prophecies of the Bible aren't just made up. They were fulfilled by Jesus. Jesus is God. He's shown it to us. And in the last 50 years, America has stopped school prayer and has stopped having Bible in the schools. And we think we're so smart, but we've created the biggest disaster in the world history. We have no accountability, people stealing money left and right. The governments are teetering because of all the theft. The local governments are overbidding for putting loans out that are way over what they need so that they can cash in, and probably all stealing everything too. But every time they're building a firehouse or a school, it sounds great. They get a massive amount of influx of money in, but the school probably costs half that, and the taxpayer has to pay the rest. Somebody's going to have to pay the rest. In the meantime, the money's stolen. That's why the price of silver's gone up. That's why the price of gold has gone up. One of the reasons. So you created, almost every politician is either blackmailed, right, or bribed, or extorted in one way or the other. They're all dirty nowadays, and none of them stand up against. They just had a vote in the Congress that they agreed not to investigate some dirty deeds done by congressmen. I mean, they're covering for each other. And the last thing they want is to be put on record. That's why they fall behind their leadership. They never want to be called out on anything, and so they can turn around and go to their constituents and say, hey, it wasn't me, I don't know, and they never want to be brought to a vote. So they're all cowards, every single one of them, and they're dirty cowards, and they're all, and that's our leadership. That's the problem, and that's why America's in jeopardy. The whole world's in jeopardy. And their only way out is to believe in Jesus and have a revival. But that's not going to happen. That's, the Bible says that we're going to Armageddon. That's what the Bible says. Okay, you got churches out saying revival and we're going to Christianize the world, like a D. James Kennedy, who I like, and a lot of pastors out there. No, that's not going to happen. The world's getting worse. We're surging toward Gomorrah and Sodom. And if God doesn't judge the world, he owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology, because it's 100 times worse now than it was then. So the only hope is, being born again. Isn't that how it all comes back to that? And you get rescued. Jesus says, I will rescue from the time of trial that is coming on the earth. I will rescue from the time of trial is coming. I will rescue from the coming wrath. All right, these are promises. And then it says, encourage each other with these things. All right, God can rapture those he wants to. He can do anything he wants. He's God. In a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, the Bible talks about this in 1 Corinthians 15 and 1 Thessalonians 5 and 4. And I mean, I think at the end of every chapter in 1 Thessalonians, they talk about the second coming, which is kind of neat. So there are encouraging words in the Bible. 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, 1 Corinthians 15. Right? These are things you need to be aware of, so that you know that God is real, that you have a way out of this mess, and you don't have to just drink the night away. You can be strong in the face of this chaos. All right, but number one thing is to be born again. Then you're guaranteed salvation, and you're guaranteed to be protected by God. All right, from the time of trial. So you'll be removed before that last 7-year period of tribulation comes on the earth, and Israel eventually receives Jesus. But it's going to take Armageddon. The whole world's going to surround Israel. And they'll probably be right at the verge of nuclear holocaust. And Israel Jesus will intercede, and he'll destroy all the enemies of Israel. And Israel will finally accept Jesus. See, God chose Israel because they were the smallest nation. You read about that in Deuteronomy 7, verse 7, I believe. And you see, he chooses the weak to humble the strong. All right? So that's the good news. Be born again, live forever, then you won't have to go through Armageddon. And then you come back with Jesus. That's another thing. In glory, glorified bodies. And then you rule and reign 1,000 years with Christ, and then after that's day one of eternity. But, we'll come back at Armageddon, I believe. I think that's what it teaches, if we just come back with him as he vanquishes with, I think, just one word. He just knocks everybody out. But you can trust that this isn't pie in the sky by and by. This is all verifiable, independent, objective. You can trust the Bible because of Alexander the Great, translating the Old Testament into Greek 300 years before Christ, has all the Old Testament prophecies in it, including one in Hosea 11:1. I was talking about Hosea. Out of Egypt I will call my son. And that'll, so he'll be. We know Jesus had to go to Egypt because of the Pharaoh wanting to kill. Herod wanted to kill everybody, all the babies, in Jerusalem. All right, so sorry about that, but we got hope. Hope is what we need right now. Okay. Also, don't look into these things. And you'll be glad you did.